everyone, and welcome to Heart and Mind. I'm Dr. Dina McMillan, and we have a really fascinating show today that I'm sure interests most of you because we're talking about, are you out of the matrix? A lot of you think so. Let's take a look and see how you're doing. Have you ever tried to check? Ever thought about checking? It's easy to feel like you're out of the matrix when all of your friends and family are fully plugged in. But let's go further than that. Let's put the control back in your hands. Now, this live stream is available every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the US. Oh, that's 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. in California. If you're in Australia, where a lot of people are watching this, it's either 10 a.m., 11 a.m., or 12 p.m. Very confusing. I even have some people who contacted me and say they watch it from the UK. You should know that it's now 1 o'clock in the morning in the UK, and some people are still up and about and watching this show. Now, if you haven't watched before, or in case you need reminding, I am a social psychologist. I'm not a clinical psychologist, so you don't come to see me and lay down on the couch and I ask you, and how does that make you feel? Social psychology does something quite different. We look at how the brain operates, how people learn, how they're influenced, persuaded, manipulated, coerced, indoctrinated, and even brainwashed. And when I say we study this, unfortunately, we don't just look and see what happens organically. We conduct studies to see how easy or how hard it is to alter someone's beliefs and behavior. And especially, we like doing this in a way that does not alert the person to the fact that they've been influenced by an outside force. Yes, this is the evil science, but that being said, I am trying to use this power for good to let you know how the world, how marketers, politicians, governments, organizations, family members, friends, intimate partners may be trying to take advantage of you, letting you see the indicators and getting that control back, helping you cut the strings of manipulation. Now, today's episode is about being red-pilled. A lot of us think we're red-pilled. Are you out of the matrix? And before we continue, I should tell you there's no way to get completely out of it without doing something like you saw in the first film, where you just really go somewhere else. A lot of our brain processes are hardwired to help us live in communities with each other. So some of what happens with the manipulation that I talk so much about is that people have learned about these natural processes and how to trigger them to their advantage. But I want to talk to you today because I know all of you want to know whether or not you're really red-pilled. Are you really outside of the matrix? Can you believe it's January already? It's hard to believe. And how are you doing with your 2025 New Year's resolutions? One of my top resolutions is to focus on my well-being. And we all know one of the foundations of well-being is a good night's sleep. So if I could do just one thing to improve my sleep and overall well-being, it's taking the number one mineral for that, which will also help me with focus, stress levels, and mood regulation during the day. Yes, I'm talking about magnesium. Specifically, I'm talking about the magnesium breakthrough by Bioptimizers. The 7 different forms of magnesium in this supplement are involved in over 600 different biochemical reactions in the body. Pretty much every function in your body gets upgraded when you take a good magnesium supplement. From the quality of your sleep to your brain function, from metabolism to stress levels. And let's face it, even if your 2025 resolution is not to focus on your health, as it is mine, how are you really going to be able to achieve all your goals without quality sleep and stress management support? Do you really think that's going to work? So do yourself a favor and make Magnesium Breakthrough part of your daily routine this year so you can get the vitality you need to conquer your goals. Go to bioptimizers.com/dailyclout now and enter the promo code dailyclout to get 10% off any order. And if you subscribe, not only will you get amazing discounts and free gifts, you'll make sure your monthly supply is guaranteed. Again, that's bioptimizers.com/dailyclout and use the promo code dailyclout. Now, speaking of Daily Clout, I think it's important you know how to support Daily Clout's historic work and order the Pfizer Papers book on Amazon. It fits in well with today's topic about being red-pilled, getting outside of the matrix. This is amazing work that took a lot of effort. The Pfizer Papers features the latest analysis on the Pfizer clinical trial documents. You know, all that info they tried to keep quiet for 75 years. That's what we're talking about. You can order it on Amazon. Just simply go in and type the Pfizer Papers. It is well worth your time and effort. Now, I want to talk to you about what we do. A lot of people talk about being red-pilled and being able to see manipulation. I would go further than that. Anybody that knows my work, who's listened to my Unmasking the Abuser podcast, for instance, knows I describe what I do here as actually helping you achieve a superpower. You're going to be able to see social manipulation. You can actually see the strings. It's like being able to see another color on the spectrum that has a lot of impact on how people think and how they behave, but most people can't see it. You're going to be able to see it if you haven't already. I'm sure a lot of you are already able to see it because, of course, this is the cleverest audience ever. Now, I also want to remind you, if you want to make a comment, please do make some comments. Go sign in on my X page, sign in on Daily Clout's X page, Facebook, Rumble, and send your questions and comments through. I want to hear from you as we go through this. I want your opinion because, after all, this show is really about you. It's about improving your abilities and improving your life. And I am offering keys to help you not only attain a superpower with regard to seeing and recognizing and having things in place to shield yourself from social manipulation. I'm actually going to discuss how you can strengthen it. So this is something very worthwhile. Don't turn off, turn in. And again, if you need to watch it again, the good news is this is live streamed every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but you can also go to Daily Clout or Rumble and watch it, record it, watch the recording. So if you missed something, if you wanted to show it to someone else, if you want to just review something that you thought was important, if you want to type underneath, type a question or comment that you want to get to me, that's what you need to do. Now, as we go through today, and we're talking about figuring out how much you've pulled away from the matrix that we see influencing so many people. All those hysterical people that I've been talking about on previous shows, where they're absolutely losing their minds and do so whenever they come up against somebody who doesn't share every single one of their beliefs. Those of us who consider ourselves fairly conservative are used to dealing with people who don't share our beliefs. But the people on the left, the people who've been heavily indoctrinated through social manipulation, and I'm saying that as a professional, that's not just an opinion, that's a professional assessment. They don't really know how to deal with people who think differently. So it is important to be in control of what you decide is valid for your life and your family's life. So when we go through and I ask you questions, answer honestly. Remember, nobody has to know what your answers are. We're not going to actually do a test at the end. Natural disasters are a reality. From the fires in Maui to Hurricane Helene, we're watching catastrophic disasters take out entire towns in 24 hours with minimal warning, resulting in a lack of basic resources. I get it. We're all wired to think it won't happen here. Then in a blink, you're in survival mode. Being prepared in advance is your best defense against the unexpected, and that includes unplanned illness. The wellness company's emergency kits completely remove the gatekeeper and subside panic by providing you with a personalized mini pharmacy in the convenience of your own home. Bacterial infections, staph, bite wounds, UTIs, strep throat, respiratory illnesses. You no longer have to be at the mercy of someone else to help you. The best idea is to have some basic medicines in a safe place in the event you need them. Getting an emergency kit is fully digital. You fill out an intake form and a pharmacist reviews and approves it. Then you receive the kit in around two weeks. The medical board approved guidebook crafted by Dr. Peter McCullough and included with each kit tells you exactly what to do. This is preparedness simplified. Invest in your family's self-managed insurance plan. Visit dailycloudhealth.com and use the code DailyCloud to save 10% and get free shipping. USA residents only. Now, the step one that we're going to talk about today with regard to figuring out if you're still plugged into the matrix, you have to assess where your weaknesses are. Where are you still plugged in? And again, if you find out you're plugged in, assess whether that's okay with you in each specific area. Remember, in order to be completely unplugged, you'd have to disassociate from society entirely. There are still going to be things that we're all vulnerable to because that's how our brain works, because it wants to keep us linked with our tribe, our group. Now, the good thing about social media, and especially since Elon bought X, is that we can find a social group that may not be the ones that we grew up in. I know that my family has shunned me since the results came in from the Trump election. Since Trump won the election in 2024, I have been shunned by my sisters. Yep, very painful. I won't lie to you, it's hurtful. But I have a lot of you that I've befriended and associated with. And the good thing is, one of my closest friends is a staunch Democrat. I talk about her a lot because I love her dearly. She's a professor in Washington State, and I love her dearly, and she loves me in spite of the political differences. So please don't, I'm going to go through this, but please don't feel like you have to be someone who is so far away and distanced from everyone. I'm not advocating that. That's very unhealthy. You decide what your values are. I just want you to be able to choose for yourself. I don't want other people to choose for you. Now, here's one of the ways that you're probably still tapped into the matrix more than you think you are if you're still watching a lot of mainstream media, especially the kind of mainstream media that has ads or that has casting and performances and scripts that espouse values that go against your own values. I've mentioned before that I have Netflix. I love their crime dramas. The real life crime dramas, worst evers. Oh my goodness. It's worth it for me just for that. I watch some shows, classic shows. I try to watch some of the newer content. They probably think I have ADHD. Here's what I do. When I turn it on, if I see woke casting, if I see woke indoctrination in anything, I immediately turn it off and I give that show or that film a thumbs down. If we all do that, they're in the business to make money. They'll start producing more content that is consistent with our beliefs and our values and stop trying to indoctrinate us into wokeism. And here's another thing I run into all the time. People think if they watch content or read content or listen to songs with woke, or it doesn't even have to be woke, because I mean, that can be a certain way of seeing the world. It can be foul-mouthed people. It can be just something that conflicts with your values. If they think, if they say, "Ooh, I recognize that and I don't agree with it," that means that they're somehow safe from that. No, because here's how your brain works. Your brain, my brain, our brains will adapt very quickly and without asking permission to anything we constantly expose it to, whether we like it or not. It assumes a level of acceptance through continued exposure. So if you continue to watch content with values you don't agree with, while your neocortex, the frontal lobe, your problem-solving part of your mind, the language-based part of your mind that is logical and rational, it can be keeping little notes about how much you disagree with it. But the other parts of your brain, the parts that make 88 to 95% of your life choices, especially if you make them quickly, is going to look at the fact that you're feeding it that content and say, hey, that must be okay with you. That must be how our group thinks. That must be guidance for our people because he or she is constantly exposing themselves to it. It thinks it's helping you. In the same way, when you go on a calorie restrictive diet, your body thinks you're starving, so it lowers your metabolism. It makes it so hard for you to continue to lose weight past 2 weeks on a calorie restricted diet. It thinks it's helping you. There's nothing you can do about that. That's how it's programmed. So it's really important. If you don't share the values, don't expose yourself to the content. Or are you someone, because I know this show, all of Daily Clout shows have really smart people in the audience. I admire that. I love talking to you guys because you're so smart. But do you think you're safe from indoctrination because you're smart? Do you think your intellect will protect you? I'm sorry, I just have to interject here. Roscoe sings, but a note here. Has anybody seen Ariana Grande lately? She's been doing a lot of publicity for that film, Wicked. That's what it is. She looks like an emaciated 12-year-old, obvious eating disorder. She just does not look right. And Rosca says Ariana Grande married her co-star, who was married to a clinical psychologist. She penned a column called, "How Does My Divorce Make You Feel?" Oh, that's normal. But getting back to this, do you think you're protected because you're smart? And here's the bad news. Most of our life choices, that's me too, are made in the non-intellectual portions of the brain. That's the emotional parts of the brain, the primal drive parts of the brain. So we can't really control that the way we want. And I want you to think about that. Increased tariffs on our trade partners, tax cuts, and regulation changes. Learn why gold is a viable diversification tactic now more than ever. Birch Gold, the only gold company I trust, is releasing their ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. To get your free copy, along with Birch Gold's free information kit on gold, text Daily Clout to the number 989898. Here's the facts. The national debt continues to increase. Our interest payments on the national debt also continue to increase. Gold is still your hedge against a weakened dollar. And Birch Gold is still the company I trust to help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. Text Daily Clout to 989898 for your free copy of the ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era. There's no obligation, only information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, countless 5-star reviews, and thousands of happy customers, including me, you too can trust Birch Gold. Text Daily Clout to the number 989898 today. Now let's get back to figuring out how unplugged you are from the matrix, the one that is trying to influence so many of us. And a lot of us are feeling confident because in spite of all of the efforts of the people, the globalists, I would call, the people in the World Economic Forum, the UN, the people who want to remove all borders, that want to remove the rights of the average person, that want to eradicate the middle class and save all of the good things only for the tiny elite. We defied them, and in spite of huge budgets, we reelected Donald Trump as our president, and he brought a whole team of people with him. And I want us all to be careful. First of all, we have a lot of work to do. I would like to be involved in this administration because we have 4 years to actually influence people not to go back to the way it was, not to assume we're safe. We have not just got to change the politics. We have to change the forces of influence that are trying to get us to destroy Western culture, that are trying to get us to destroy the American dream and American society. We cannot allow that. But we cannot only do it with our team. We have to convince some of the people on the other team to come along with us. And that's going to require the same sort of mechanisms that were used to influence them to be self-destructive in the first place, which means social psychologists need to be involved. And I want to ask you something else. Think about this for a second. Are you confident you don't have anything to learn from people who think differently? I mentioned a few shows ago that I actually signed up to Blue Sky because I wanted to see what they do over there. And because I have the only prevention program for domestic abuse and violence in the world right now, I don't only want to save people who voted for Trump. I don't only want to save people who think like me, vote like me, worship like me, look like me. I want to save everyone. So I went over to Blue Sky and I started an account. Beautiful photography over there. I don't know what's going on. We need to get some of those photographers over to X. Beautiful photography and a lot of very angry people. And sometimes when people say things, it makes me cringe and I turn away. And then I think to myself, no, I can't afford to do that. Let me look back at what they said and to ask myself why it bothered me. We cannot afford to be lacking in the resilience that it takes to look at everything we're doing with fresh eyes, including critical eyes. So sometimes it's important to brace yourself, take a deep breath, and look back at somebody who totally disagrees with you. See if they have something that you missed. Now, if you were busy on New Year's Eve when I had my last show, episode 20, it might be worthwhile in looking at the recording, because one of the things I discussed there, crucially important, perspectives you may miss, and it's worthwhile to get them. It was based on all the arguments everyone was having about legal immigration. And there were some really big points that were being missed by all the experts. And I said, hey, while you're doing that, have you thought about this? Have you thought about the fact that people just don't beam into a job, that they live there, that they have an impact on the infrastructure, the water system, the roads, the housing, the schools, the dating scene, the marriage market? Why aren't you talking about that? Why are you only talking about employment competition? All of us, when we get excited about something, involved in something, when we develop expertise, we have to be really careful about developing tunnel vision. And an easy way I explain to people what tunnel vision is like, if you are fully abled, it is likely when you go into a new facility, a new building, a new place, you don't notice whether or not it's wheelchair accessible. Unless, of course, you have someone in your family or a partner that is not fully abled and has mobility issues. But if you're fully mobile, do you notice? I mentioned last week talking about something that Jackson Katz does in his macho paradox training, where he asks guys, what do you do not to be sexually assaulted? And they all laugh and say things like, I don't go to jail. And then he asks the women, and the list is extensive. Not because these guys are insensitive or bad or toxic masculinity or any of those things, misogynists, but just because it does not impact their world. They are not vulnerable all the time like women are. So there are things they just don't have to think about the same way we do. So one of the problems with getting too fixed in your mindset saying, I don't want to listen to people who oppose me, is that they may have, even if a lot of what they say is not backed up well, don't just dismiss it. Go through all of it. There may be points that you didn't consider that will actually improve what you're doing. It's important not to be arrogant about this. You have to keep examining and testing your views. It is uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie to you. It feels awful. And one thing I noticed when I went over to Blue Sky and I saw all these hateful things being said about President Trump, about Trump supporters, about Elon Musk, it bothered me. And then I thought to myself, do I get this bothered when our side says something about the Democrats? If I'm going to be a principled person, I have to have moral values without a double standard. And yes, I do hold myself accountable. One thing you can be sure about, I have faults, and I will tell you about most of them, but I'm not a hypocrite. I will never advise you to do something if I haven't done it myself. And I also want to make sure that it works. Here's another important point that I run into all the time, even on our team, okay? People who don't want to look at a topic out of hurting because they're afraid of hurting someone's feelings. They know someone who's made those choices or has that lifestyle. So whenever opposition to that mindset, lifestyle, life choices is made, they look away or they dismiss it or they just don't get involved because they don't want to find out something that, if they are really in opposition, will hurt the feelings of someone they care about. Well, guess what? You can still care for people who make different life choices. Ta-da! Everyone doesn't have to do everything exactly the way you do. Remember in the good old days when sometimes we would say, I agree to disagree? Remember those days? When people weren't calling for anyone they opposed to be poisoned, shot, or run over with a car? The good old days. Now, that doesn't mean that these different values don't count. And you do have to be careful about how much exposure you have, and especially careful of saying you agree with these things just to keep the peace, because it's a slippery slope to actually just not standing on your principles at all. But you don't have to bring it up every conversation. You can talk about what you share, what you have in common. And as I said, I'm more than happy to do this. Hopefully, my family will recover enough so that I don't have to spend all the next holidays without them. But I'm not the only person who's been shunned. And I've been dealing with this for about 15 years. Because once I learned social psychology and I learned how behaviors impact that individual, the people around that individual, how it flows out, how it alters things over time, I became a lot more conservative than I had been, and certainly more conservative than I was being taught to be in my university. They wanted me to be blind to the impact of what was going on, blind to outcomes, and just go along to get along. I didn't go through all that education to do that. Now, here's another one. Do you pass over a topic when new information about it comes up, telling yourself, oh, I don't need to read that article. I don't need to examine that. I know that already. Do you do that? It's easy to do if you think you have a lot of expertise. Don't. New insights are gained all the time in every field. Learning and science and understanding of the universe is dynamic. It is not fixed. There's always something new to learn, including where we've made mistakes. And by examining this new information, you may notice something you missed, a new perspective or a crucial factor. And in fact, it may not even be that the information is new. You just may have a different mindset at the time, and you pick up on something that you overlooked before or minimized before. So if something's important to you, constantly expose yourself to the information so that you can be genuinely as smart as you want to be. Most people know that staying hydrated is essential to nearly every bodily function, but 75% of Americans still don't consume enough fluid daily. As we age, natural bodily changes make staying hydrated even harder and more important, especially trying to do it without artificial additives or excess sugars. That's where Native Path comes in with extra help. Native Path's Hydrate isn't just another drink mix. It tastes wonderful, but it's also thoughtfully designed formula packed with BCAAs and all 9 essential amino acids to help with muscle recovery and overall vitality. Plus, it's completely sugar-free and 100% natural. With their Native Hydrate product, you can fuel your body with essential electrolytes at the cellular level for overall vitality. And unlike other hydration drink mixes that are designed for marathon runners and contain upwards of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, Native Hydrate contains just 230 milligrams of sodium for optimal daily hydration. Free of artificial flavors, sugars, and dyes, it's only 5 calories per serving. Right now, you can get up to 44% off just for being a listener of our show. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee, 2 free gifts, plus free shipping. Visit nativehydrate.com/Daily Clout to see what Native Hydrate could do for your health. Again, that site name is nativehydrate.com/Daily Clout. Now, I had another comment from Roscoe Sings. Is Roscoe Sings the only person who's going to talk to me today? Come on, you guys. I know you have some opinions. Roscoe said, I literally had a neighbor tell me Trump was going to put me in a concentration camp for being gay. The person knows there's zero evidence to support that. Well, Whoopi Goldberg said that he's going to reinstate slavery, so I guess we're both in trouble. These people are sick. And I'm not sure with the next part. And certain sizes are contingent of Kamala supporters. Yeah, that's because I think what has happened with the left over the last 10 years as social media influence has increased. People do a lot for clicks. They're always trying to shock. And if you'll note, the first time Trump was president, anytime somebody said something absolutely horrible about him or did like Kathy Griffith with the decapitated head, the mock decapitated head of Trump, they get so much positive attention. So it's like they're like little kids on a camping trip, taking turns trying to scare each other. And after the election, we also saw people trying to compete to see how deviously evil and destructive they could claim to be. We had people saying they were going to poison people who voted for Trump. They were talking about killing people who voted for Trump. And all of the people who said this, like when we talked about the Aqua Tofana movement, where they were talking about make Aqua Tofana great again. And Aqua Tofana is a type of poison, slow-acting poison, used in, I think, the 17th century by an Italian woman who developed a slow-acting poison to help women in abusive relationships get away from their abusers. And the people who posted things about Aqua Tofana got millions of hits on TikTok. So there are over 1 million people who think that it's a cute idea to poison someone because they didn't vote the way you do. We are not going there. But if you're going to really be free, we have to talk about not only unplugging from the matrix, but actually staying unplugged. And that includes not falling into a pattern of compliance with our side either. You have to stay relatively open and independent. Now, here's something that I still see a lot of people do. There are popular saying and ideals that I see a lot that allow a lot of the really extreme negative behaviors to flourish. They allow them to continue because people just don't understand how this all works. Let's talk about a couple of them. A couple of my, I would say, Roscoe says it's noble to warn someone about a genuine danger. When you doom and gloom based on total BS like this neighbor did, it makes you a real, words I won't use in the presence of this host. Well, thank you, Roscoe. But yes, I know what you mean. I am very alarmed by the level of hostility from the Democrats that we're seeing. which is why I've been talking a lot over the last weeks about my Healing the Rift program. So a lot of you who own businesses or work in HR, my Healing the Rift program can be very helpful in getting people to calm down and learn how to work together effectively without either side feeling like they have to alter their values. I want the people who have been, I don't know, indoctrinated to change their values because we make a better case and we're able to influence them to leave behind some of that destructiveness and self-destructiveness, not because their employer is demanding it of them. I don't want to take the anti-racist programs that have been and diversity programs that have been so destructive and just reverse them. That's not the solution. If you want to know, contact me about my Healing the Rift program. I can really help. Now, here's some things that people say. This is the number one thing I see all the time. I don't care what consenting adults do. It's when it harms kids that it's unacceptable. No. What happens in private impacts public behavior and shared social norms. That is one of the woke lies, that what happens with adults and what happens in private is irrelevant. And if you can't quite see it, if you're objecting, yelling at your screen right now because I'm saying this, ask yourself, if someone in private has sex with 3-year-old kids, is that okay? Or if somebody is in an abusive relationship where they've been coercively controlled and conditioned and brainwashed to accept horrendous treatment, is that okay because they're over 18? You know it's not. And what happens in private impacts public behavior. It impacts economically, it impacts rules, it impacts votes, it impacts all sorts of things. And our shared social norms, it all counts. And keep in mind, children model the behavior of adults. In this picture, almost all of these baby drag queens are actually boys. These are all little boys, except the one who looks like a little boy, who's actually a little girl. Now, when you see something like this, do you go, oh my God? For me, as a Black person, I see drag as gendered blackface. So for me, drag is just as offensive as a minstrel show. It's mockery, it's hypersexualization. And when I was working in the LGBT community, the drag queens and the trans-identified males were the worst as far as woman hating. They were the worst misogynists I came across. Now, here's another thing. A lot of you are still saying you're an ally. Don't be an ally. Don't be an ally. Being an ally means you're biased towards a group. Your superpower requires you to be objective. Look at everything. I look at every group I belong to objectively. Gets me into a lot of trouble. I won't lie to you. But I look at everything and say, is this healthy? Is this healthy for the individual? Is it healthy for society? And because I've taken 7 years of advanced research, statistics, and analysis, etc., I look at the data they provide to say it is okay. Most of the time, it is not credible. Are you somebody that says, I'm glad I made that poor choice? I hear this a lot from women, I have to tell you. So my own group, speaking of groups, women tend to say this a lot. I need to experience something to learn the lesson. You have to kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince. BS. What I'm teaching you about being able to assess things, being able to perceive things, being able to recognize things, the good news is it allows you to see what's going on in other people's relationships so you can learn from other people's mistakes. You don't have to make them yourself. Isn't that great? And to tell yourself your life is better because you are wounded and scarred. No, I'm proud of you for thriving in spite of that. But don't lie to yourself. Your life isn't better because you endured that. And if you have the ability to keep someone else from going through that, please do so. Because if you perceive that as a positive, it will subconsciously impact your willingness to go as far as you need to protect others from going through it. No, let's learn from other people's mistakes. And are you somebody who only notices harm when it's extreme? You're ignoring the links between certain behaviors and damage. There is no way that it is healthy for this little girl to be around that kind of deviant behavior. Her parents should be ashamed of themselves. And I'm sure most of you would agree with that. But know something, most harm is on a continuum. It doesn't start at the extreme end. You have to actually look at it and say, okay, what is it linked to? Stop it early and control the damage. And I also want to let you know something. Okay, I love you, Roscoe. Roscoe, what do you think about coming on the show next week? Because you're the only person commenting. I want everybody else to comment too. Come on, you guys. Yes, you're right. In the 3-year-old example, I'm talking about boundary of consenting adults, but I also use the example of indoctrination. And okay, here's an example. Look at what happened with Woody Allen. He groomed his stepdaughter from the time she was a child to be his sexual partner. And a lot of people excused it because once she became a legal adult, he married her. Do we think that's okay? And I work in abuse. I told you I work in abusive relationships. So I see a lot of coercive control and heavy indoctrination, and they use every brainwashing technique known to humankind to exploit someone else, to condition someone else, to indoctrinate someone else. Is that okay because the person's 18? I just don't think so. And Roscoe also brings up Jussie Smollett. And by the way, Roscoe, I like the fact that you disagree with me on things. And for the rest of you, don't feel like you have to agree with me on everything. I want to hear your views. This is a show about you. And I told you I'm not a hypocrite. I cannot learn if I don't keep an open mind. And yes, the 3-year-old example, I had just read something this morning that really got me upset. So that's probably where that came from. But you'll notice something. People often will say it's not good if it's kids. And I'm not saying everything that's appropriate for adults is appropriate for children. Please don't think I'm saying that. But all I'm saying is if you see something and it appalls you when it's done for kids, there's a good likelihood that it's got issues for adults too. You've just been told you're supposed to turn a blind eye. Now let's talk a little bit about where you may have some previous indoctrination that's still active. Are you ready? Come on. I think being in LA makes you in reality a panderer. I agree with you. Roscoe, you're my guy, okay? And where are my other people? Come on. I want you to make some comments here. So here's how to do this. Why can't I just accept this and say, hey, I could be wrong? Because I practice. Practice. Number one, notice how you feel when you're confronted with a contrary viewpoint. If you experience real discomfort, cognitive dissonance, it can mean that you don't just believe that thing, that it's embedded in a way that may not be healthy. Notice how much you agree on this point with those who don't share your values. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't be able to have a Democrat friend if we didn't have some values that we share. We don't like people being exploited. She is an expert on domestic violence and sexual assault in Black women. She's done incredible work, which is how I found her to become friends with her in the first place. But you also have to look at Did some of that indoctrination come through? Because a lot of you only woke up a few years ago. I woke up 20 years ago. I have an edge on you there. Doesn't mean I'm invulnerable. I still have to be careful. But I can see some places where the indoctrination is still there. And notice the links between the causes and groups and the extreme ideals you oppose. So you're looking at, like, let's take Black Lives Matter, one of my favorites. I looked at them and thought, oh my God, they're going to make racism rational. Ugh. And they were doing extreme things, but I walked it back and said, what is it linked to? Diversity training, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Walk it back. See where it starts. And know that if you're going to get rid of the extreme end, you're going to have to do some work on the lighter end as well. And keep in mind, if something is credible, if it's a belief, a value, information, it will have factual evidence behind it. And the people who know about it, okay, Roscoe, you're going to have to contact me after this. Okay, I'll contact you. It will have factual evidence behind it. Real information is borne out by facts. And here's another thing. When you have credible facts, you don't mind if people check. People will say, you know how a lot of the Democrats have been trained to say source whenever you say something they disagree with? And the average person doesn't walk around with a device full of research articles. So they're kind of on the back foot, which is the whole reason it's done. As somebody who does walk around with a lot of research articles, whenever somebody says source, I used to gather some sources and send it to that person. I thought they really wanted to know why I had a different view. Turns out they just wanted to disagree with me and make me feel bad because they'd find every excuse they could think of not to read what I sent them, not to watch what I showed them, not to consider the alternative perspective. And of course, I can't criticize that if I don't do it myself. So when somebody disagrees with me and they send me a source, I actually look at it. But what has happened, and I'm sure those of you who are academics know this, if you look at the articles and I worked so hard to get my doctorate. I really did. And I look at the doctorates people are getting now and the dissertations that are actually being passed as doctoral material. And I'm stunned and appalled. It has no basis in reality at all. The research is not credible. The evidence is just crazy. But I want to end on a positive note. Enough negativity, okay? I want you to go back and think about this. Are you still plugged in anywhere? Go through the points again and ask yourself, ooh, am I plugged in somewhere? And believe me, I have to do this for myself too, especially if I get caught watching a Netflix show and not turning it off. I really have. God, the content. I wish I could work for their network. I would have so much better content. But anyway, here's some ways. You're all doing well. Dun, 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 dun. I should have had music here. Most people aren't as plugged into the matrix as they were before 2020. Those of us who are watching this show, who are part of this network, saw something really disturbing going on, and instead of running away and hiding their heads in the sand, said, I need to get more information. I want to know what's going on. I don't want this to happen. Yeah, Roscoe says COVID woke me up. COVID woke a lot of people up. For once, I was like, it was like I was spitting into the wind. I was just, people thought I was exaggerating or an extremist or crazy because I said, look, my field shows me that this is linked to this and this is a problem and this is this. And a lot of people didn't want to know because it was inconvenient. They wanted to be able to trust the matrix to take care of them. And COVID showed so many of you that you can't do that. Another thing, although poor Elon felt picked on, and I mentioned that in episode 20, that I thought he felt a bit betrayed. He felt like everybody was picking on him, and he's done so much for us all. I just love that guy. But none of us is perfect. I had told you I expect you to disagree with me if you disagree with me. People said when it comes to you're an immigrant, we didn't vote for Trump to increase immigration of any kind. That includes legal immigration. We don't want to have to compete against the world for jobs. And Elon was like, but I came that way. How many Elons are there? One. Okay. And I'm not saying there isn't some value to plucking out some of the elite, but I also mentioned in the last show, you've got to look at more than just how smart they are. Culturally, will they fit in with American culture? Are they willing to assimilate? If they're not, we need to have a really good thought about whether to bring them over. I don't care how smart they are. What about their behavior towards the opposite sex? God knows we don't need any more predatory men. And it's not just Middle Eastern guys and African guys that are predatory. A lot of the guys, okay, don't get mad at me, people. Finance industry has a lot of these guys who think anything they do is okay. If you look at Wolf of Wall Street and you see the behaviors that were okayed there, I was stunned and appalled, but not surprised. When I was a model living in New York, the worst subway ride, other than the weirdos who were openly touching themselves on the subway or trying to make passes, which has gotten much, much worse. But the worst time to have to travel, the worst route to have to travel is through Wall Street. I'm 5'11", and so there were a lot of guys that were just like standing up against me and rubbing up against me and stuff in business suits. They all worked in the finance industry. It was terrible. But I like the fact that when we disagree with our leaders, we're actually saying so. We don't have to be mean. These people have really sacrificed. I mean, Elon didn't just sacrifice billions of dollars. If you look at all the threats he's had, including the threats against his life that continue to happen, if you look at the assassination attempts on Trump, oh my God, he's going to be such a leader in the history books, let alone anything else. The courage of that man. I'm so proud of him. But I don't always agree with everything he does. And when we disagree, we say so, which is a good sign because it means we are not a cult. People are becoming better informed about what goes into your body. And for this, I would say you should also follow Naomi Wolf. She is so clued in about healthy products. That's how I found her. In fact, I admired her work with women, but when I started following her Substack and her Daily Clout page, I was seeing health information that I found really useful. And I want to tell you something, God's honest. All the products advertised on this show, I use them all. They are phenomenal because she's very picky about what she says is okay. And we're listening to each other and to those who oppose us. This is why I'm still so proud of myself for my Healing the Rift program. I am willing to work with anybody. Let's see what we have in common. Let's see how we can work together. I want to make it possible for us to be one country again. I'm sure a lot of you think the same way. And I'm seeing a lot of people who are willing to listen to each other, even to people they disagree with. I know that Bobby Kennedy Jr. told Trump he doesn't agree with him all the time. And Trump said, yeah, okay. So proud. Now, if you need to reach me, here's how to reach me. www.drdinamcmillan.com. Any ideas for a new show? If you want to come on my show, I can have up to 10 people at a time. I'm going to be contacting Roscoe's Things to see if he'll come on next week. If you want to come on, if you have a topic that you'd like to discuss, But I want you to really think about this. I want you to go into the new year as unplugged into the matrix as possible. Get control. And I'll see you next week.